Hello and welcome to Books Up Close. I'm Chris Lloyd. This is the close reading show for readers, writers, and anyone interested in how texts get made. In today's episode, I talked to Ashton Politanoff about his new novel, Dad Had a Bad Day, published July in the UK with Daunt Originals. And if you are reading along, we're going to talk about the opening fragment. Possibly book title of the year, don't know. But anyway, as soon as I posted on Instagram, the number of comments I got being like, what is this book about? So something is going on here. Ashton is a frequent contributor to Noon, edited by Diane Williams. His writing has also appeared or is forthcoming in McSweeney's, Southwest Review, Conjunctions, New York Tyrant, Egress, and elsewhere. He is a former Division I tennis player, and his childhood coach was Robert Lansdorp, who is credited with coaching Pete Sampras, Tracy Austin, and Maria Sharapova. His novel, Dad Had a Bad Day, is forthcoming, spring-summer from Astra House and Daunt Books. Politanoff's first novel, You Like It Here, was published by Dalkey Archive in 2022. He's an English professor at Cypress College. Ashton, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. I'm excited to talk about Dad Had a Bad Day.
And tennis. And look, I'm going to just come out and say it out the front. I am not a sports person in any way, shape, or form. People that know me know this. I just can't get into it. Don't understand it. Don't have strong feelings either way. So when I got sent a book about tennis and a middle-aged straight man having like a breakdown, I was like, is this the book for me? Turns out I was hooked within like 3 pages. So you did some kind of magic here, I guess.
Well, Chris, that's great to hear. I guess the concern is this only going to appeal to people who like tennis? And so that's really wonderful to hear. And I'm just grateful to have you be in conversation with me today.
Of course. And now that I know you also play tennis, now I have like even more questions. But anyway, before we get to the extract, I ask everyone this. How do you feel about close reading as an activity or a practice? Like, what is your relationship to it?
Well, great question. First of all, I'm a very slow reader. And so I would like to think, even though I'm not annotating my books, I like to leave my books annotation free. And I don't know if that's because I have messy handwriting and that's been instilled in me since I'm a lefty. I'm left-handed since I was a little child. But I am a slow reader. As a writer, I really value language at the sentence level. So that's a big concern of mine. And I think I can be quite critical of texts as a reader if it's not appealing to me in that way. The other hat I wear is I teach English at a college here in California called Cypress College. And although our bread and butter as a department is teaching composition and critical thinking, I do integrate literature into my classes. And I also am lucky enough to teach some creative writing courses. So close reading is something that I really try to help students navigate, learn, because I think that not only makes us better writers, but better thinkers.
Yeah, that's exciting. And yeah, the multiple hats is always like interesting, right? In this dynamic, we might usually be close reading someone else's work, right? So already I've added a weird thing in where I'm like, let's talk about your work. But then also, are you approaching it as writer or reader or teacher, right? There's like multiple kind of lenses, I guess you can take, which is the thing I'm interested in, basically, in having this conversation of, I see this thing, what are you thinking about that? Or if you have any thoughts about that, right? And that's all the kind of the fascinating stuff to me. So we're going to talk about the very opening of the book. I've kind of called them fragments in our emails, but I don't know what you would call them. But it's not in like chapters per se, and some of the sections are very long, some are short. Is fragment an okay word?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fragments, rallies.
Okay.
In the case of tennis,
Yeah.
so we have long rallies, short
Okay.
points.
Yeah.
I think I also referred to it as bursts of language on occasion when I was doing an interview this week with another writer, and that's something we labeled it as.
Okay. Because like on the back of my copy, there's a quote from Catherine Scanlon, right, whose book is also in those kind of like fragmenty pieces, which I don't know, I really like it as a thing. Like it feels like you're just getting like glimmers, and you're like, are these connected? Am I following them in like order? They kind of destabilize something in a way that I appreciate.
Well, that's great to hear. I just gravitate towards that length as of right now.
Hmm.
As a writer, it appeals to me in terms of I feel like I can control the language a little bit more, or at least, yeah, have some sort of mastery over it, and it doesn't feel as unwieldy.
Right.
And I think it's the best that I can do in terms of maintaining integrity at the sentence level in these shorter passages.
Mm.
And even some of the longer passages in the book are things that I pared down
Hmm.
with my wonderful editor, Emily Bell.
Okay, we'll talk about your writing practice a bit more later, maybe, and we'll tease out some of that. But why don't you read the extract for us first, and then we can start talking about it.
Okay, great. My wife was still at work. My son didn't want to go to the park, but I needed to get outside. He had a fever, so I gave him a glass full of ice cubes and told him to suck on them during the drive. His school wouldn't take him back until the fever was gone. I drove in a direction until we found a park. The park was one we hadn't been to. The grass around the playground was tall, uncut, and I followed him down the concrete path. The sky was orange, with only a few clouds as the sun set in the distance. A girl was on the swings. She was self sufficient, tucking her legs behind her and straightening them forward, building momentum. My son was not self sufficient. He still needed me to push him. The swing the girl was on was silent on the way up, but it sounded like a bird's chirp on the way down. It was rusty. The girl was alone. My son climbed some steps leading to a slide, and I took a seat on a wooden bench with chipped green paint. Directly across from me, behind the playground, were two tennis courts. They looked slick and worn from use, and the net sagged down the middle. On one side of the nearest court was a young man, a towhead. My guess would be 18. And on the other side was an older man, presumably his father. The young man took his racket back for a forehand with a quick shoulder turn, all the time in the world, his feet making tiny little squeaks as he moved. He sent the yellow ball in a clean arc deep to the other side of the court. The father with the sports sunglasses was confident. The rally continued. The constant percussion of the ball being struck with trained perfection by the young man sent a vibration through me. I found myself walking toward the fence, the sound of the ball, the flick of the wrist, feet stepping forward like daggers, then tumbling back like leaves, the ball hailing and then collapsing missile like onto the hard court. Then I heard a cry behind me. It was my son.
Thank you so much. I had to mute myself there because I was laughing again at some of the parts of this, and we discussed a few little passages that we could have talked about today. And I think you were right. This one is like this is an opening. It tells us so much about the narrator. Yeah, I have so many thoughts about this narrator generally. One thing, and I think this is really in evidence here, is that this book is very the kind of creative maxim of show don't tell, right? And I don't know whether you're conscious of this or what your relationship to that thing is, because I don't really believe in it. But there's this idea of like he never says how he feels, like very rarely in this book, right? As a narrator, he never says like, and then I thought, or and then I felt. Like you never get that. You only ever get descriptions of things, right? Or kind of this like outside view. So even like I found myself walking toward the fence, like he could say like I was mesmerized by the, but like he doesn't. He never wants to tell us what's inside, which I think is such like a clever thing to do, but also like is that not hard to sustain that for 300 pages? It's like a really distant kind of narrator, even while we're finding out so much about him. And I think this opening is a really good example of that.
Yeah, thanks for that reading. And I think you raise really interesting points in terms of the narrator's reticence or inability to share how he feels.
Mm.
And I think that happened organically as I was
Hmm.
writing. It just felt like the voice took me a while to land on that voice. I had
Okay.
two false starts before this one. where I wrote 10 pages, discarded those 10 pages, wrote another 7 to 10 pages, didn't feel good about it. And it wasn't until I created a couple outlines from screenwriting practice. I didn't refer to those outlines at all while I was writing the book, and I went in a very different direction with it, but it helped me get out of the woods. So once I had that down, I started writing, and this was the opening, the original opening.
Oh, right.
And then in terms of the author, or not the author, the narrator's inability to share feelings, I think that also says something about the kind of masculinity that exists in this book. And the only times we really have the narrator emoting is these letters to his wife, Lorraine,
Yeah.
that he never ultimately really shares with her anyhow. But yeah, it created an interesting tension for me as a writer, and sort of this dread under the surface, whether it's a crisis of bottling up emotions and not facing trauma or other things, and also just keeping the reader off balance, and also
Yep.
myself as a writer.
Yeah, for sure. Like I feel like this book, there were multiple times when I was like, oh, this is going to go this way. And then it doesn't. Then it's like, oh, it could really go there. Like, it was very uneasy. Like, I was very tense reading this book. I'm like, there's not a huge amount at stake in this book, right? There's like tennis and one marriage, but like, it feels way more ridiculous. And you're right, the letters to Lorraine, for listeners that haven't read it yet, you've got this kind of narrative voice all the way through, and then the little letters interspersed. Dear Lorraine, one of the first ones had me cackling. He's like describing her meeting, like saying hello to someone in a park, and she compliments like another dad on his children. He says, when you said you make such beautiful children, it felt like a compliment to his semen. And I found that deeply offensive. Yours, your husband. At that point, I was like, okay, this is a book that is speaking to me. Like, this isn't actually about tennis, right? This is about all of the things that are like said and unsaid in relationships, in like just in the world, in maybe like contemporary, maybe it is a book about masculinity, but even just contemporary America, maybe even like,
Mhm.
There's a lot in here about what things look like from the outside versus the inside. And I think this narrative voice trick is part of that. I call it a trick. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but the way it's
No,
working at the sentence level, like this what you just read out is very staccato for much of it, right? My wife was still at work. My son didn't want to go to the park. The park was one we hadn't been to. Like, it's very kind of short, sharp sentences, right?
yeah.
It's like a very interesting way to begin the book. Like, there's a real you feel kind of there's like it's like clenched somehow.
Yeah, my goal was to represent the different tensions or pulls in the book. The husband's absent wife, in at least in his mind,
Right.
right? Even though she's hardworking and providing for the family, the husband's the father's responsibility towards his son, and his sort of resentful attitude that comes out even in the words of the direction of, I told him to suck on the cubes. And ultimately this pull towards a former pastime, or not a
Mm,
pastime, but a former life in terms of tennis.
yeah.
And so when I wrote that opening, I was like, okay, this is also sort of a guiding reminder to me as a writer in terms of the different things at stake here, the elements in terms of husband wife, father son, tennis,
Yeah.
that I want to play with throughout the novel.
Yeah, and it's definitely play. Like, I mean, my son didn't want to go to the park, but I needed to get outside. And you're just like, okay, he had a fever, and you're like, oh, already he's not the most likable person, right? Like,
Right.
he's not the person immediately you're like, I really care about you. You do by the end, but at the beginning, he had a fever, so I gave him some ice cubes. I love his school wouldn't take him back until the fever was gone, right? As though it's
Right.
like it's the school. He's the school's responsibility, not mine. I'm lumbered with this thing, right? That's sick, and I know he's sick and he doesn't want to go outside, but I need to get out. But like, why do you need to get out? Like, he doesn't tell us. He never tells us. He never shares like what's going on. I need to get
Right.
outside, so the kid's got to deal with it. And you're like, okay.
Right. I think you hit on a lot of funny moments there. The school thing is something that is a constant negotiation when your child is sick,
Yeah.
and my wife and I obviously always try to do what's best for the greater good. We're not going to send our child back within 24 hours of a fever.
Right.
Um, but I thought it would be really telling to have this narrator want to just push the kid back to school as soon as possible because he's very busy, obviously.
Yeah, very important. We should say like he's just been made redundant, right? At this point, like you
Right,
find out very quickly. We know why his wife's at work and why he's at home with the kid, right? Like so
right,
there's a very particular context to that, which is like quite it's quite hard hitting at the beginning until you're like, he's not applying for jobs. He's not trying very hard to get himself out of this predicament, and then joins a tennis club. But that's outside of this paragraph, so we won't talk too much about that. But that next line, I drove in a direction until we found a park. The park was one we hadn't been to. I think that's like interesting as well, right? I drove in a direction until we found a park. Like, even though he's desperate to get out, he is directionless from the
yes,
start, right? It's not even like, let's go to the park that you like. It's just like, I just went that way. I don't know whether that is like he doesn't really know what he's doing, or it's part of his like the way he describes himself to himself, right? Like that I found myself walking toward the fence. Like, no, you chose to walk towards the fence because you were interested in the tennis. But it's the
right.
way he narrates himself, right? To himself almost.
Absolutely. I think as I was composing that or looking back at it in revision, I really liked a direction
Yeah.
because it refers to this aimlessness
Mm-hmm.
that Ned consciously or subconsciously is feeling. And yeah, and I think this sort of I found myself walking towards is this. It's a really, in some ways, unresponsible attitude to act as if you don't have agency,
Yes.
and we can see that though happening throughout the book
Oh,
in terms
yes.
of you have choices in life, and Ned clearly makes some choices.
Yes.
So
Choices is the it's like another title for this book. Um yeah, like, but even that in that sentence is the one where suddenly the language like opens up, right? Up till this point it's been quite restrained, quite staccato, as I was saying. But then I found myself walking toward the fence, the sound of the ball, the flick of the wrist, feet stepping forward like daggers, then tumbling back like leaves, the ball hailing and then collapsing missile-like onto the hard court. Like it really, the line opens up, the language becomes more poetic. I don't love that word, but
yeah,
it becomes more lyrical, I guess. Even the commas add this kind of this suddenly movement because he's like entranced by the movement of the tennis. Whereas up till now, it's like he's just describing like the mundanity of the world, right? Like his lines are this just like this full stop, this full stop, this full stop. But it's the tennis that like lights him up.
absolutely. That's one goal of mine as a writer. One of my goals at the sentence level, when appropriate to the narrative, is to congest it with feeling.
Mm,
And that was my aim there, was to congest those sentences with feeling, his
mm,
feelings toward finding tennis again,
mm.
and his love for the game, but also, as we learn, his complicated relationship for the game.
Yeah, his love for the game, but also like what you see in that little section that he's attentive immediately to the relationship between the two players, that it's like a
Yes,
father and son, right? It's not just tennis, but it's like who are the people playing? And it's always men, right? Like he's interested in like male players throughout the book, which is like part of this world as well. So I think it's interesting that, even he's not just saying like, oh, they're playing an interesting game, but like I'm guessing the boy was about 18. I'm guessing the older man was his father, and the father is like fine. No, what's the word he
right,
uses? Competent. Um,
competent.
like he's telling a story about these two men already, right? He's like codified them. He knows who they are. He's projecting onto them. The father with the
Absolutely.
sports sunglasses. That also feels like a read. Do you know? Like that feels like a like he's mocking this other man. I'm just like, you would be the kind of person that wore sports sunglasses. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I think there is this element of this scrutinizing, this sizing
Mm,
up that happens throughout the book, and we can see it here. And as you astutely observed, it is a father-son on the courts in this initial scene, and that's something that rears its head throughout the book.
yeah,
And Ned is very attuned to that and very sensitive to that.
yeah. I mean, I had to look at what towhead was. That's not a word I think I know. Like, there's a particular kind of like blonde kind of young man, right?
Yes,
Does it have
it's
other significations as like a word? It's just an interesting word in the paragraph, or whether it's just more American than I'm used to.
I think it's more American, also just a very Californian
Right.
beach culture
Fine.
thing to say. And I live in Redondo Beach. I
Okay.
pretty much grew up here in the South Bay. But that's
Fine.
a term I've heard quite often, specifically though from an older generation
Mm, mm.
describing someone with very light blonde hair.
Yeah. Like there's something going on there too, right, as well, with this kind of like version of this young white masculinity, right, that runs throughout the
Yes,
book too. Race is here in the book too, in a more minor key, but it's like there in terms of the kinds of masculinity or the kinds of like body that we're thinking about. So I think just like
absolutely.
a young man, a towhead, my guess would be 18. My guess would be 18. He's like a doctor or something. You know, he's like, or like a policeman. Do you know what I mean? Like being like, oh, he was about this high. Like he looked 18. Yeah, this kind of like speculation about these other people. You're like, why is that the thing you're telling us about, not the tennis, you know?
Right. It's almost as if he has like Terminator 2
Yeah.
lenses on and is just sizing and
Mhm.
calculating everything.
Yeah, everything is a calculation in this book, right? In so many ways. Like he's trying to get away with so much as the book spirals, shall we say, or as he spirals.
Right.
I and I think it's, you know, even the tennis. We'll go back to the swings. I'm interested in those as well. But he talks about the tennis courts, and he says they looked slick and worn from use, and the nets sagged down the middle. And I was like, oh, I sat up for that, like worn from use and sagged down the middle. Like
Yeah.
that has to be a comment on like the middle agedness of things, right? Like that's his kind of projection too, in a way. Both like these are courts that are like really overused, right? They've been there forever, but also that
Right.
kind of sagging in the middle, right? That's just like such a description of like the middle aged body, right? Like when people talk about the
Absolutely.
middle aged male body, it's like that sagging, and it's so funny that it's just like it's in everything he sees.
Absolutely. And even just this selection of the park really reflects his interiority in
Mm.
terms of how he's feeling about himself at this state, physically, mentally. And yeah, the description of the courts is another representation of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like because we're locked in his first person perspective, right? And it's present tense as well, right? Which is like also part of that. It's not first person past, but it's like it's very present. We're so trapped in a way in the way he sees things. So we kind of learn to see things the way he does. And it feels kind of claustrophobic at times, even though, you know, you've broken this book up with these little fragments, you still feel very tightly locked in. And yeah, I'm guessing that's like conscious, but it's an interesting thing to work with as a writer, I guess. To be you never give us that like wider view. We don't jump
Yeah,
to someone else suddenly, or you know, make sense of it from a different point of view.
absolutely. I was really interested in the psychological aspects,
Mm,
obviously, of the character, but also the after effects of playing competitive tennis, an individual sport, on
right.
a court that is usually enclosed on all sides.
Hmm.
And then the domestic piece, too, in terms of on the surface, there's this noirish domestic thriller
Hmm.
vibe to the text. And so those were elements that I certainly was thinking about and how to create that feeling throughout the text.
Like I guess in the way that he is stuck in his place in the world, right? He feels stuck in like all of the things that are projected onto him that he's supposed to be as a man, right, in 2026.
Yes.
And like we're not allowed to get outside of that either. And I think that's a really clever move in a way. We're not permitted anything that he isn't. And I'm thinking like the playground, like the grass around the playground was tall, uncut, and I followed him down the concrete path. The him being the sun, I guess, but it's like an interesting him there. Like the him is interesting. The sky was orange with only a few clouds as the sunset in the distance. There's almost something like pastoral there, right? This like tall grass, like the sun setting. A girl was on the swings, and you're like, oh, it's like this pleasant pastoral image. And then it obviously has to turn, right? He describes her as self-sufficient, and you're like, oh my god. In his mind, she has to be like, my son was not self-sufficient. He still needed me to push him,
Yeah.
which again is just like he's not. He's like, oh god, this kid needs me to actually like push him on the swings. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, that's kind of your job, no?
And I think this is also the only moment of, even though it's filled with resentment and self-loathing, the only moment of childhood innocence that
Right.
Freddie encounters in the novel.
Yeah.
After this, quickly, Ned takes up a membership at the local club with a secret credit card, and Freddie's in on it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this is the only passage of some normalcy,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, for this child.
Yeah, and just like play, for its own sake. And I think play is interesting as well, right? Because tennis for him, for the father, can't ever just be tennis, right? It has to be like serious tennis. Like he can't just play for its own sake.
Can't play for fun.
No, he can't play for fun. He can't just be like, oh, I found a court in the park that we went to with Freddie. Like, we should play some time, He's like,
Right.
no, I have to go back to the club. I have to join it. I have to create a league. We have to like beat each. And he's like the child here is like fun, and he's like, there is no fun, right? There is self-sufficiency, and there is like
Yes.
neediness. Like you either look after yourself or you're just like this weak thing. And it's just
Right.
from the get-go. And I mean, you find out as you go through the book that his own father has instilled lots of this in him, but just very funny from like the opening that he codes everything as like, can you look after yourself? Are you I don't know, self-sufficiency is also like a very American concept too, right?
Yes.
Like the individualistic, you can do it on your own thing, even down to like, can you make yourself swing on a swing? Not sure Thoreau was thinking about that when he wrote Walden, but you know what I mean? So a different kind of self-sufficiency.
Right. No, I love your reading of this passage, and I found it alarming and sad how Ned compares his child to who this girl who's purportedly more self-sufficient. So yeah, I think there's this veiled, under the surface cruelty in some ways too, in terms
and a
of
real
just his attitude in parenting.
To parenting, to just like children, but even just like to other people, right? Just like anyone outside of him, he's just so detached at this point in his life that understanding others is just very difficult. There's something, I mean, I want to know your thoughts on this, that like the swing the girl was on was silent on the way up, but it sounded like a bird's chirp on the way down. It was rusty. The girl was alone. It's like we've gone from she's self-sufficient to like there's something kind of pure about the swing going up, but then when it comes back down, it makes a noise.
Yes.
And that kind of is like, oh, it was rusty. The girl was alone. Like there's a glimmer of the kind of ease of her self-sufficiency, if you like. When it comes back down to earth, actually, there's like rust in there. There's something complicated in there. And
I think
the squeak also then made the chirp then reminded me of the squeak of the feet on the tennis court a little bit later on, right? His feet making tiny little squeaks. You've got these squeaks and these chirps, these tiny little noises that are somehow like, I don't know how to make sense of them, but there's some kind of like material resonance, right? Of like the humanness of it.
Yeah, there's a frailty there.
Mm.
And I also was at a park a little similar to this, and the swing made a certain sound similar to this. And I found the noise a little eerie.
Mm.
And I think this was my effort to infuse that sort of unease already into the book with those sounds.
Yeah, it's like every horror novel, right? Like there's always a kid on a swing.
Right.
Like every time the kid's on the swing, and then the swing goes, and then it you pan back and the kid is gone, right? And the swing is going on its own. It's like every
Right.
horror or
Right.
thriller like scene ever.
Right.
And like the girl was alone. You're like, okay.
Right.
Like you think maybe he's gonna be like, oh, are you okay? Yeah, or
Yeah.
something, but no, he doesn't do anything with that. He just notes it and then he carries on.
Yeah.
Which is funny as well as dark. And then at the very end, like then I heard a cry behind, he's watching the tennis, and then I heard a cry behind me. It was my son. Full stop. New fragment. You're like,
Right.
the kind of bluntness of that. It's not even then I heard my son cry behind me. Like he's not even aware of like what the noise is, right? It's as though he's just turned around. He's like, "Oh, it's you. What have you done?" And he has to put like a band-aid on it in the next fragment. But just the thing that takes him out of his revelry. There are always these moments like puncture through. The girl is self-sufficient, but then like the swing is actually rusty. The game is like this beautiful kind of like back and forth, and then you hear like the feet, the squeaking, the contact with the ground, and then now my son's crying. Just there are all these like moments of breaking through the veneer.
Absolutely. I love that. Again, for me, that ending of this first fragment really represents the tension of the novel in terms of this newfound pursuit of tennis, and then also his responsibility as a father, as in daddy daycare, and how he finds himself being pulled away from what he truly desires, which in some ways is just a reverie, a dream. It should be just a game about fun and play.
Yeah.
But as we know, he takes it very seriously, as do
Yeah.
many tennis players in this book.
Right. But especially like older tennis players who, it's like your time in the big leagues is clearly over, right? Like you're competing
Right.
against like teenagers and like young 20s men. And you're like, no, I've still got it. There's this real kind of like drive towards like I can get this glory back. Rather
Although on
than
social media, I was just alerted today that there's a 45-year-old Ryan Haviland who's 2000 in the world right now.
Okay.
So there's still hope.
There's still hope. Clearly, I don't know enough about tennis, but yeah. Yeah, and it all seems objective, right? But he's always like commenting on like, oh, the young guys that are playing, and he's commenting on their thighs and their like shoulders
Right.
are really broad, and it's like, and I'm just like, this is quite gay, but like he does it in such like I'm just describing the body in its like pure male state, right?
Right.
But like subtending all of that is all of this kind of like desire to be them, to be young again, to like have that kind of body, to there's like a woman that comes into the scene. I won't spoil anything, but like immediately he gets jealous when like younger men are in her presence. So like the male body as something he's unwilling to really look at, even though that seems to be like one of the biggest like things that is confronting him.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think those are great observations about Ned. And I thought it was really interesting too how he without spoiler alert, this moment of conflict that happens later on in the book when a younger player sort of steps into this, creates sort of a triangle with this female member of the club. And also, who's he jealous of in that scene? Really?
Yes.
I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah. I mean, my brain went straight to Challengers, the movie.
Yes.
Like all through this, I'm just like, I don't know. There's there's something about the erotics of tennis, I guess, that like is really like a charged way of thinking about desire and physicality. Maybe because it's like often one-on-one. There's something about the kind of, and it's a constant, as you say, rally. This like constant back and forth that is tension ridden, right? It's like it's just there in the nature of the game. Again, I don't know what I'm talking about, but when there's like team sports, to me, I'm like, this is thoroughly boring.
It's a totally
right?
different dynamic. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's just like so many people running around. I'm like, what are you all doing? I'm bored. Whereas at least with tennis, you're kind of like well, it's either you or you. There is,
Right.
and it's a competition, but there's also a kind of element of like in syncness, right? Or not in syncness, that is pure tension that has to be erotic at some level, right? Because there's something about like, does it keep going or does it like end? Right? There is
Right.
something,
Right.
yeah, there is like some kind of climax or some kind of like ongoingness to it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic in terms of the players are separated by a net.
Hmm.
It's one on one if you're playing singles.
Hmm.
If it's doubles, there's more people on the court. But this sense of it's very personal. But the language is obviously the point, which is very physical.
Hmm.
I think artistic in some ways,
Hmm.
but also can be violent
Yeah.
as well. And yeah, it's the game is communicated through the rally, through the point, and
Yeah.
it is interesting in terms of the norms of how
Hmm.
you're supposed to interact on the court. The communication is largely just calling the score out loud
Hmm.
or arguing over line calls.
Yeah. That was
And
fascinating to me.
Yeah. So, and even in practice, and I think it's interesting too in terms of the male friendships that are forged superficially through the game of tennis in this book,
Mm.
and what competition does. Competition in
Hmm.
quotes, because at the end of the day, it's just a game. There's really nothing at stake, but
Right.
these players create the stakes. They create
Right.
the world, this microcosm at this club
Mm.
through gossip and this sort of hierarchy of who's the best, and
Yeah. It's as much
and
psychological as physical.
yeah. So this categorization in terms of where you stand,
Hmm.
not just on the court, but off the court, physically, and all of
Right.
that. So
Right. Like, I mean, the feet stepping forward like daggers, the ball collapsing missile like, right? Like we're in the world of war,
right,
right?
right,
From the get go. So even though we don't know how deep into Tennessee's going to get at this point, it's an attack, and that sets up so much of the drama that's to come. I get the sense this was like a fun book to write. Like I want to ask you about your writing practice generally, like how you do that. But what was the experience of writing this once you got that voice? After you did your first two tries,
yes.
like you must have had fun writing this.
Oh yeah, it was a blast. Most of it was fun. I will
Okay.
say that when I got closer to the end of the book,
Hmm.
the last quarter of the book, I had a very different feeling while I was working on the text. It was more of it came to me like a fever dream where I wrote it quickly, but I felt very tormented. That was hard. I felt, yeah, tormented while I was working on that part. But leading up to that, the
Hmm.
dynamics of the team, the recruiting, the shenanigans with his son, the target runs
Oh yeah.
with his son. I found a lot of joy and comedy in that while I was working on it,
Hmm.
even though this is all leading to a darker place.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wrote a lot of this book actually at the club that I
Oh.
played tennis at. I wrote it at the upstairs bar
Huh.
during closing hours, meaning in the morning. And I'd have a grand view of all the courts while I
Mm.
was composing the text. And some of that was fleeing distractions at home
Yeah.
to write. And some of it I wrote by hand and then I would type into the computer later. Other times I would change location. That's something that helps me keep the momentum. Or
Hmm.
if I'm trying to write for a couple hours, sometimes writing in one place and then going somewhere else, getting that breather
Mm.
and sitting down again helped me. But I wrote the first draft very quickly. It took
Okay.
me about 3 months. When it was acquired and I worked with my editor Emily Bell, I doubled the length of the book. So it was much, much shorter before. And and really it was just a draft. So really added a lot in terms of flashbacks
Okay.
and such. And but the writing process was still pretty similar in terms of writing some of the scenes by hand. I had a list of scenes that I wanted to add into the book, and I sort of went through them like a checklist, and not everything was included in the new draft. Ultimately, cut some of those scenes that I initially added, but that was what the writing process was like. Oftentimes, getting back to this close reading, coming
Hmm.
full circle, I would chew on language before I even started writing for the
Mm.
day, and I would pick up a book by Christine Scutt or an issue of Noon edited by Diane Williams,
Hmm.
or I would read Old Food by Ed Atkins. And I would just read the work aloud and just for a minute or two and just chew on language. And that really helped me as I sat down to compose.
And get into that particular headspace.
Yeah.
So you don't mind if you're typing or writing by hand then? Do they give you different, like, are there different affordances to those things? Like, do they make you write differently or think differently?
I think when I feel more in my head about it,
Mm.
when there's more self doubt, sometimes slowing down and writing by hand helps me.
Right.
I can't be as self, I can't be as critical because again, I have really messy handwriting. So, and I do, when I have the patience for it, I do really like writing by hand, because writing it by hand and then transferring it into a Google Doc or a Word document, editing takes place. And I
Yeah.
find that the end result is something that is hard to get when I write straight into the computer or type right into the computer. So,
Yeah.
but when I want to get a greater sense of the narrative, or how am I going to fit this puzzle piece in, it is important for me to be working off of the computer in a Google or Word document.
Yeah.
I find that really important for that. But yeah, I vary. I vary in terms of how I write. Oftentimes, there's a build up too, in terms of, again, I had some false starts with this book, but I'd been thinking about writing this book for a long time.
Hmm.
I grew up playing tennis.
Hmm.
I played competitively. I played college tennis. I played some semi-pro events and quickly learned that it's really tough out there. And I took some time off from the game.
Hmm.
And I would say I definitely have a complicated relationship with the sport. I think I have forged a better relationship with the sport now. I view it as exercise and play.
Yeah.
I hit with my wife quite
Okay.
often now. She's learning how to play, and I
Hmm.
really enjoy that. And I have a few friends that I really enjoy playing with,
Okay.
even when things get a little competitive.
Are
But
you roping
yeah,
your children into tennis? Have they started?
so my youngest loves it and he
Okay.
wants to play all the time, but
Okay.
and I feel badly because I should be responding to his requests more. But they're both playing baseball right now,
Okay.
and they play soccer. And not to sound like a total jock, but my oldest is taking piano lessons, and he's quite the artist.
Okay. Good.
I
Fine.
definitely believe in fostering
Hmm.
those interests as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I maybe I'm a little too passive in
Hmm.
my role as a soccer dad or baseball dad. But yeah, I just my thing is always, hey, are you having fun? Did you try your best, but are you having fun?
Hmm.
And that's my attitude right
Okay.
now.
No, I like that. My parents couldn't pressure me into sports even if they wanted. And also, I think sometimes not even trying our best, I think that's also fine too. Sometimes
Totally.
we just do what we do, and that's good
Right.
enough for today. But that's funny. That's amusing. I mean, you can't write this book if you don't know tennis. So I assumed you did know tennis to some degree, but like, interesting to see that from the kind of inside out. When do you first remember thinking about being a writer? Were you writing as a kid? Were you imagining that as a thing you would do?
I used to draw a lot as a
Okay.
kid. My father was a production designer
Hmm.
and film TV, but he also painted and made sculptures. So I was lucky enough to be in an environment where that artistic pursuits was encouraged, and
Mm.
he bought me several notepads and gave me some pencils that he would use, and so I loved drawing portraits, and from a young age I was really into drawing, I guess, like mazes and things
Hmm.
that one can interpret as being very psychological
Hmm.
in nature. So that piece was already brewing in me in terms of the sort of text that I like to write. I didn't write much. I wasn't much of a reader.
Mm.
I do remember, though, we had a substitute teacher when I think I was in fourth or fifth grade, and we had a creative writing exercise. And I remember how much I loved the feeling of being in this world that I was creating, and just being in that zone.
Mm.
And I still remember that feeling, what it was like at the desk, and then the sense of warmth that I had when the substitute teacher, she was so kind, where she really took the time to read through what I had written on the spot, and she
Hmm.
underlined things that she really liked, and she even said, this right here, this is a writer, what you're doing here,
Wow.
this is so good. And obviously I remember those words,
Yeah.
but my focus really was tennis. In high school, I didn't. I read a little bit of Herman Hesse, and outside reading on my own.
Hmm.
But it wasn't really until I was in college when I had an athletic advisor say, Ashton, take this creative writing class. It's an easy A. You're gonna and I first of all, I didn't get an A. I got a
Hmm.
B. And secondly, I remember the instructor, wonderful man, he said, Ashton, you're great with plot, but you really need to work on language. And I must have taken that to heart because that
Yeah.
has become a preoccupation of mine.
Yeah.
But, anyways, after that
Mm.
experience, I was transferring to a different school. I spent a summer abroad working for some family in France. I have family there. I'm part
Hmm.
French. And Shakespeare and Company was
Mm.
a few subway stops away. And I found myself there quite often. And then I discovered a informal writing group that met on Saturdays with all these expats. And although I didn't share any work at any of those informal gatherings, I listened and I read a lot that summer, specifically writers that had crossed paths in Paris and
Yeah.
spent some time there. And I decided when I went back to school that fall at UC San Diego that I was going to change my major to literature with an emphasis in creative writing, and I discarded the notion of becoming a lawyer.
Wow.
And I was initially studying political science to
Mm.
eventually achieve that and go to law school. But I just fell in love with reading and writing, and I had some wonderful faculty there. And Sarah Bynum was one of my first instructors. I took I think two classes with Chris Kraus.
Hmm.
I had Anna Joy Springer there, who really encouraged experimental avant garde work. One story I wrote kind of more as a conventional narrative, and then in the revisions, she encouraged me to look at William Burroughs's
Hmm.
cut up method, and that's what I did. And I won an award for that story at the college. But I also took a screenwriting class, and I was encouraged to pursue that. I had an in to the
Hmm.
TV film industry through a case of nepotism, and so I did that for a number of years. But ultimately, I came back to prose. My mother became very ill with cancer,
Mm.
and I found an escape writing short stories again before work in the parking structure of the studio lot, and
Mm.
I started submitting those. And eventually, I sent a story to Diane Williams at noon. I had been a fan of the journal, was fortunate enough to have her work on that story with me, and ultimately she published that story. And I think that really marked a turning point. And I decided I was going to go back to school to get my master's so I could teach writing
Mm.
while I pursued writing. And here I am now.
I love
about
this origin
himself.
story. This is a great
Yeah.
origin story.
Sorry, I've gone on for quite a
No,
bit
no,
here,
no.
Chris.
Part of this podcast is to show general listeners like inside a writer's world, right, and inside the text, and be like, this is thought out, this is deliberate. You can do this too. But also,
Yeah,
writers are just
absolutely.
like random humans, like everyone else. They're not these magical things that spring out of the ground. Um, everyone has a very different direction and journey towards writing. So I love hearing the history. This is good to me. Can you give us any book recommendations? This is the thing I ask for everyone. They can be new things, old things, things you return to, anything you like.
Absolutely. Last year, I would like to boast, was my greatest year in reading, 2025, since being
Okay.
a parent. I think I read about 20 books, which is a
Okay.
lot for me.
Hmm.
And I was James Wood pilled in terms of the critic James Wood and
Yeah.
reading a lot of the books that he recommended,
Hmm.
but also a lot of. So I went through the archives of the New Yorker
Right.
and tracked a lot of those titles down. So many fantastic ones, but the one that really stood out was The Promise by Damon Galgut. I read that and I absolutely loved that book.
Yeah.
I think it's so brilliant. The language is incredible. The narrative structure is incredible, and just such a moving tale. So that's one I've been recommending.
Hmm.
Other books, I read Tanya French's The Searcher. So
Hmm.
that was my first Tanya French. I read that earlier this year, so 2026.
Okay.
And I really liked that one as well. It sort of scratched that itch for me of sort of a thriller noir,
Hmm.
which I enjoy, but it felt much more literary
Yeah.
than something typically in that genre. And
Yeah.
I really loved the slow sort of Western
Hmm.
pacing of the book, building towards some action at the end, and how Western Ireland was rendered. So I really enjoyed that as well. So those are two books that I would recommend. Right
Yeah.
now, I'm just reading a lot of surfer
Huh.
biographies, gearing up for my next book, which is going to be a surf novel.
Okay. Wow, you really are Southern California through and through, aren't you? This is just, yeah. But yeah, the promise is amazing. The structure is, he shifts these narrators and you get this real kind of kaleidoscope thing. Yeah, really fascinating. And Tana French, I listened to an interview with her where she said, she's so used to crime novels, like they open with the dead body, right? And I can't remember
Right.
which one it is. I think it's like The Witch Elm, that she says, like, I'm not going to give you the dead body until like 200 pages in.
Wow.
So she was like, how do I write the crime novel that isn't the crime novel everyone has read already?
Yeah,
I
I
guess
love that.
I guess I just delay the murder. I delay the body. And I was like, so she is really thinking again, like, what can genre do? What can the form do? So yeah, great
Right.
recommendations. Love those. Thank you so much for your time, Ashton. It was really, really great to talk to you about this book.
Well, thanks so much, Chris, for having me. And it was really great to talk to you about this book.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want some more episodes on interesting family dynamics and parents and children, go to episode 12 with Abigail Bergstrom or episode 28 with Seth Insua. Please subscribe if you haven't already, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or YouTube, share with people in all the places, tag me in any posts of episodes that you like. There's a feedback form. You can get more information by subscribing to Substack. This show was made possible by an Impact Accelerator Award from the Arts and Humanities Research Council and the University of Hertfordshire.